You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
I'm Chris Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, there, ladies, things that makes it official. Welcome to the big show. As always, the Chris Voss Show is a family that loves you, but doesn't judge you as harshly as the rest of the world, because if you're here, you're trying to make your life better, you're trying to improve it, you're trying to find great stories, lessons of life, cathartic moments, all the wonderful things from the CEOs, the billionaires, the White House president's advisors, Pulitzer Prize winners, the great authors that are always on this show, sharing their journeys of life and making your life better. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the TikTok, and all those crazy places on the internet. Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may buy advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind. Today, we have an amazing young lady on the show. We're going to be talking to her about her new book of poetry. It is out February 14th, 2025. It is entitled Unraveled by Kelli Kassoff. We're going to get into some of the what is billed in the book as confronting the hard truths of emotions and intimacy. So not everything is sweet in Candyland, I guess, these days. Kelli is a poet and nonfiction short story writer, known for her bold storytelling, her belief that we are all made of stories. She wants to tell them from the depths of where they've been buried. Her nonfiction work is haunting and visceral. Stories that explore themes of dehumanization, exploitation, love and joy, grief and suffering, or what we call Fridays around here. Kelli's work has been featured in several literary magazines, journals, and discussed on podcasts. She lives in Houston, Texas with her husband and children. Welcome to the show, Kelli. How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you for having me today, Chris.
Thank you for coming. We certainly appreciate it. Give us your .coms, wherever we want people to find you on the interwebs.
Sure. Website is kellikassoff.com and Instagram is author.kellikassoff.com.
So, Kelli, welcome to the show. Give us a 30,000 overview. What's in your new book?
Oh man, it's the rise and fall and rise again of relationships. Yeah, so it's an emotional journey for sure.
How many poems are in it? You're a poet. There's short stories.
Correct.
Pass the book out for us, if you would.
So my writing is a very different style. It's more free form poetry. It's prose, so it's long form. It's not rhymey and sing-songy. There's 16 chapters. I call them stories, and each has its own plot structure and its own story. But if you smush them all together, they make one big story. So it's kind of like a little novel, but in a very emotional, short form way.
So this is your first book. Congratulations on that.
Thank you so much, debut book.
Yeah, debut book.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's more coming down the point. You've got more stories to tell.
There is. I'm super excited. I'm working on my second book, and I haven't released the title of it yet, but I will love to share that on your show. This title for the second book is called I Spy a Water Tower, which is very personal. It was a game that my grandfather and I used to play on road trips to keep me entertained as a child. Yeah, book 2 is going to be more of a novella style book. It's a chunkier, fatter book with stories not only from my life, but from other people who have given me permission to write about some of their stories and their lives.
I love what you had said in the bio, and it's on Amazon under the details and stuff like that, where you talk about how we're all made of stories. I want to tell them from the depths of where they've been buried. We often talk about that on the show. I mean, I think of myself as a griot, a collector of stories. We've had over 2,300 guests on this show, and we collect their stories. There might be some overlap with some double guests there. I had some of the Tom Clancy people on 5 or 10 times or something. Yeah. So don't write me on you two people. But I think one of my quotes is stories are the fabrics of our life.
They really are. They really are.
Without them, it's how we kind of learn from ourselves, and it's how we learn from each other. Movies, TV, books like yours, podcasts, all these different things. People are just telling stories. And
Totally.
it's a human story. It's the story of their lives, and it's the fabric of your life. You can look back in your life and think of mistakes you made or things that happened to you, trauma, damage, people not being nice to you. And you can go, God, if I could turn back time, I would maybe want to change a few things. But then you're like, that would change the fabric of who I am. I mean,
it would change the whole trajectory of your outcome of your life. I think that people, when I say that I want to tell all the stories, I think people have a really hard time vocalizing things that happen in their life because of fear of judgment. We live in a super fast-paced society, social media, instant gratification, and there's a lot of hate mail out there. And I think we're losing the art of storytelling. You're not going to learn from me if I don't tell my story. Like it's a snowball effect, right? And so there's something beautiful about storytelling, especially emotional storytelling, that people are scared to talk about. That's what I love to write about.
Yeah, it's I told the story a million times on the show, and we talked about it recently with another guest yesterday about how important stories are and how we learn from them. But sharing our cathartic moments, sharing our struggles, what you've written about the book, the rise from the ashes sort of phoenix experience, I think, is that a good characterization? In doing that, we help other people with what I call the blueprints of solving their problems. And, it's like it's like people tell me, when people hear stories, if they have those struggles, and, years and years ago, I wrote this emotional, I don't know what you call it, diatribe or whatever, emotional outpouring of losing my dog, and how it just hit me like a ton of bricks and hurt. And I thought, I don't want to, I struggled with myself for half an hour to publish it because I'm like, no one cares. No one is so selfish. Me, poor me, victim me. And no one's this just is too much. And finally I decided to publish it, and I published it. And it was amazing how many people it helped. They were like, oh, seeing you process, closure of grief for your dog. I realized I never got closure with my father. I never really got closure with this, that, or the other thing. And life is just a collection of stories.
It is. And it's interesting when I started this whole publishing journey with Unraveled, I got called a lot of names. Like the names that you were kind of self-describing, self-indulgent, delusional, attention-seeking, like all of these things that people label you as you're trying to tell us, tell your story and the healing journey that you were on. But then on the flip side of that, which is so beautiful, is that I have received so many like DMs on my Instagram or through my website, people saying, you've really helped me recognize XYZ, or I'm in the same situation that you seemed to have been in, and you're giving me hope right now that there's another side to it. Yeah, I mean, I think that the art of storytelling is what it's ancient, right? That's how we started as a human species, is telling stories. So I think that it's something that we need to continue to do and not be scared to do it.
Now, how long? When did you start writing or finding you had a knack for writing?
So I've always written as a way of just like getting things out on paper in my brain. I don't have a creative writing background. I have actually a finance background, an economics background. But it was always sort of as something that I did. I wrote on a blog for a really long time. It got kind of a cult following here in Texas. And then it's kind of spiraled into a book. And it was my husband who was like, man, like, you're talented. Like, you should really push publishing. And so that's how it all came to be.
Oh, there you go. So. It's plus, COVID and other things, this kind of weird times we've been in lately.
Yeah.
It gave way to a lot of great book publishing because people were at home.
Totally.
Yeah.
I feel like COVID gave space to a lot of art forms, books and creative arts and screenplays. Like, it all kind of started to come back, which was really kind of cool.
Let's do COVID again. We need more authors.
We need more artists.
Yeah. I mean, it was great for our podcast because, there was just a flood of just great artists and first-time book writers like yourself. And so it was really great. It gave people a lot of space to kind of think and reanalyze their lives. But, I often say stories are the owner's manual to life on the show. The one thing man can learn from his history is that man never learns from his history, and thereby we go round and round.
Yeah.
But learning these lessons are important, whether there's big stories of, I don't know, Hitler taking over Europe on the History Channel, or whether there are individual cathartic moments. And we all go through these struggles, and there's always somebody, I'm always surprised that, if I'm going through something, there's other people that have the same sort of issues and the same sort of thing they need resolved. And, I had an author tell me one time, he goes, somebody out there needs to hear your story. They need to, and no one else is going to touch them, their soul. No one's going to move them through their writing except you. They are waiting for you, and they need you because you're going to come to them in a moment where they need you the most. And they're going through whatever that problem is that you solved, and you're sharing that blueprint of how you solved it. And, the other thing is realizing we're not alone. That's the big thing with stories. We realize we're not alone. Oh, Mike had problems with his dental work too, whatever the case may be. And so we find that, that's the worst thing as human beings. We can feel that we're alone, that the world is against us, and a lot of people turn to self-harm at that point. And realizing that we're not alone, and there's a whole lot of people who maybe experienced what we did, and they survived, and they got through it, and life is better on the other side. So
Absolutely.
Any thoughts you have on the not alone part? Because I think that's a really interesting part of this story of sharing. Like a lot of your stories you share in the book are human stories of human.
Absolutely. There's a lot of moments in when I was writing that were the stories are deeply they're painful, and they're moments that happened in my life and with the people that I was surrounded with. And it's interesting how you can go from a human being who has all of this support and all of this love to someone who feels incredibly isolated and feeling the bottom of the well. I write about this in the book, is like feeling the bottom of the well. Like that's when life starts. Like for me, at least, that's when life started. Like when you hit rock bottom and you've screwed up really, really bad, and other people have screwed up really, really bad, and you decide to take the lessons you've learned from those mistakes and completely reinvent yourself. That's exactly what I've done, and I wrote about it in my book, and I'm writing about it in my second book. And my books aren't like self-help books by any means. I'm no professional in mental health whatsoever, but I know from my experience, that was what it took to completely reinvent myself, was hitting rock bottom and being isolated. And writing a book is isolating. At least it was for me.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's a very personal experience because no one else can write it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Unless you have a co-author or something, but yeah, it's your thoughts and the what you're typing onto the screen and the editing, and of course, but like I say, it's I've had authors tell me, there's somebody out there that needs to hear from you. We had an author on, I remember, who she wrote, I can't remember what she wrote. I think they were historical novels or if they were uplifting motivational books. I don't remember which, but they were positive. And they put women in positive roles in historical fiction context. I think that's what it was.
Okay.
And there was one time she was signing books, and she told the story on the show. She was signing books at a book signing, and a gal came up to her, and she says, you helped me get out of prison, and you helped me survive prison and get out of prison and want to be a better person. And she pulled the gal aside and talked to her after, and the gal had been in jail for a few numbers of years, and the women in the prison had created a book group, and they would read her books. She had a series of books, and then they would share and talk, and then they would try and decide to build better lives than the ones that had got them into prison. And she ended up giving, she pen pals with her now, and she ended up giving her a picture of her in her jumpsuit when she was in prison. And she says, I keep that now at the base of my computer screen when I'm writing.
As a reminder.
I'm writing to. And it turns out there was this whole group of women whose lives were being enhanced and bettered, and they were making those choices themselves too, but being influenced by her writing. She had no idea that wasn't her target. She didn't sit down and go, I'm going to write a bunch of books for these people. And so you just never know. It's interesting.
And it is interesting. I mean, I've had people, when I started Unraveled and I started writing Unraveled, it was more of like a healing journey for me. And then once it was published and it started to gain some traction and it hit a best-selling list on Amazon, I got some calls from local women's groups here in Houston who want me to come and speak about my experiences because there's so many women out there who are currently in the situation that I was in, and they don't know where to go, and they're buying my books for book clubs in these organizations. Yeah. And they're talking about it. And I never thought that would be in the cards for me ever. And so I'm happy to continue to share my story and share my style of writing. And it's been an awesome experience. Unraveled's been, it's been great.
So you explored the emotional and factual truths about love. Why is love so hard? There's all sorts of things that go on with it that you talk about in your book. Mm-hmm. What makes it so challenging, do you think? I don't know. I'm just spitballing here.
Yeah, no. I think that as humans, we have this constant guard up. We're scared to peel back those layers of vulnerability for someone because we're scared of judgment. We have a fear of being rejected. We have a fear of rejection. And what, love and joy and blissful moments in relationships are the easy parts. The hard part of love is navigating turbulent times and navigating disagreements and heartache, because love, like when someone breaks your heart or when someone deceives you, that is wrecking to your soul. And love does that to us, right? It's a strange emotion. It has its highs and its lows, and it's easier to write about the pain of love than it is to write about the blissful moments of love that I've learned. I feel like there's more words in the human language for us, or the English language for us, to write about painful moments than it is to write about joyous moments. But love is a tricky thing, and I think it's just we are so scared to feel rejected, but we're all seeking approval and love from our partners or our spouses or our friendships or our family. So it's a tricky dynamic, love is.
Yeah, because you can't control it.
No control of it whatsoever. Yeah.
I've created companies all my life, and I love companies because I can control them.
Absolutely.
That's probably why I'm married to them, I guess. But they have a prenup.
That's good. That's good.
But no, I mean, the problem with love is, and in interaction with another person, is that person has their own free agency. You have your own free agency, and not all these things line up. I've met wonderful people in dating all my life, and sometimes you just, you don't match up. Sometimes you match up for a while, and you find
and then you grow as a person, and your interests change, and your love it's so fascinating to me, because you can meet 100 people in a day or 50 people in a day. Mm-hmm. And there's no attraction, there's no love, there's no connection whatsoever. It's just, you're just meeting other people. And then you have this one that you meet, and it's like, it changes your neurological pathways.
Yeah. I call them lightning strikes. I've had a few lightning strikes in my life where you just meet this person, and for some reason you're just
enamored,
attached to them. Sometimes it's trauma bonding, but
that is true.
Get your trauma fix, folks out there. That's the message we was telling the show. Don't buy crystals. See a professional therapist.
No crystal rocks.
Yeah, see a professional therapist. If you collect crystals, that's fine, but when you start worshiping them and think they're going to solve your dad wasn't in your life, it's not going to work. So I'm just saying, because I love you, and I want you guys to, out there in the audience, we talk about this a lot of the show. Don't buy crystals. Get professional help.
Yeah.
Yes. Seek professionals. People are like, I took ayahuasca and everything's fine now. No, it's not. You may think it is, but you're just high. Yeah. Anyway, is the future book that you're going to put out, is that more short stories, poems?
Yeah, it's more short stories. So each chapter will have true nonfiction short story form, and then in between each chapter is a little bit of poetry that I've sprinkled in for edification. And you can't have a Kassoff book without some poetry in there. But it goes into more, it's less about love and relationships and more about just crazy wild life experiences that people have, that some people have given me permission to write about, and some that are from my own background and upbringing. It's a totally different style of book, but same writing creativeness to it.
Maybe your next book should be, I survived that shit and I can't believe it. Right. Here's the story.
Yes. Here is the story. Here's the truth, damn it.
I can't believe I'm still alive. I think we could all write a book like that,
I know. Yeah. It's funny. Some of the things that we talk about, some of my friends and I, how we survived our early 20s. How are we alive? And we're all parents now. We're like, oh my gosh, what are we doing here? So some of those stories are going to be in the second book. That's for sure.
It'll make for some
wild and
stories.
crazy.
Yeah, and it's interesting, I always talk on the show about how every guest on here, I know a couple things. I've been through some stuff, and I read a book once. I flunked second grade as a callback joke on the show. But basically, I learned so much from guests, and sometimes they come and they tell, a lot of times they're telling me something I already know, but a lot of times they bring a different paradigm, so they look at it from a different angle, and I'll think, God, wow. I knew about that, and I'd seen it from a few different angles, but I never have thought about it in that way. And then I come away with, wow, okay, that gives me a new perspective on. And sometimes they open my eyes to something that I was like, wow, I really should spend more time thinking about whatever that thing is. I think a lot of people close their minds off. They're like, well, I know everything, so I don't need to talk.
There's a lot of herd mentality, I feel like, that goes on in our society these days, like with all these trends and now with social media. I grew up in a time before there was like internet. It's like I remember when AOL came out, and I was like super excited to have the AIM chat. But it's different now. We live in such a different world where there's just so much trend consumption. I could go on and on and on about this, but it's kind of baffling to me that there's less uniqueness in people these days, at least that I'm experiencing, that I wish there was more. And this goes back to the whole storytelling thing. Like, I wish that people would tell more stories, because there's so much authenticity in everyone's life experience. We need to bring that back. We create a new movement and bring back the authenticity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You bring up a good point that I haven't considered. See, here's an example of you changing my paradigm. But, a lot of people, there's so many stories. I mean, we joke about how the Chris Voss Show is an algorithm of everything. I was trying to explain to a friend yesterday what the Chris Voss Show is, and he's like, what's who's on it? It's like everybody. And we everything from romance novels to poetry books and stories like yourself to governors we've had on the show, congressmen, politics, history. There's hundreds of history books, hundreds of romance novel books. So we joke that we're the Netflix of podcasting, because you can go binge whatever you want on the show.
Totally.
From our numbers, people just binge everything.
Yeah.
They consume 96% of every show. And I think the 4% is they cut out at the end, because they're like, Chris is wrapping the show next. But I don't know why it's 96. It's kind of funny.
That's a crazy number. It's good stuff.
Yeah. But, hey, I'd rather have 96 than nothing. So one of the things one of the things you mentioned is there's so much stories out there that you don't have to even talk about your own. You don't have to think about your own. You don't have to share your own. And you're right. I remember before TV, you and I grew up before the internet.
Yeah.
And before that, you would do, and this is even before like TV and before radio, families would sit and they would tell each other stories. They would get up and perform, or they'd talk, and they would each take turns doing that to entertain each other. That was how we did things before radio and TV and all that stuff. And so there needs to be more of that. I think when you assess your condition or your arrival in life or your stories like you have in your book, and you have to there's some sort of self-accountability and self-actualization that has to take place there.
Oh, absolutely. Self-reflection, self-introspection, right? Yeah, absolutely. And to go along with this whole trend thing, I think that as a society, we're really starting to lose the ability to be introspective, which is such a shame, because there's so much that can come from that.
Yeah. And if more people would share the stories, I think it would be more interesting. I mean, it really is. I joked about how I call myself the griot of storytelling.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm King Griot, but I'm up there. And I love stories. I mean, I'll talk to people on planes. I'll talk to people wherever. And I'm curious about the journeys of life. How did you get here? What were the choices you made? Why did you make those choices? What was your influence? And it gives you the fabric of human nature. It gives you the fabric of the patterns of our lives, the stories. And it used to be in Africa, they had these things called griots. And what the griots would do is since they didn't have a way to, write stuff down and store stuff, and it probably didn't store well in the rainforest, paper writing. Hey, what happened to the thing? Oh, the rain got it. Lorraine got the history book. Shit, that was like 400 years there. That's gone now.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, in ink, pour ink. But so the griot's job would be to keep the history of the tribe. Mm-hmm. And so there would be one person appointed over generations to be the historian of the tribe, and he would keep all the stories of the tribe and the generations from the prior griots. And that's how important storytelling was. That's how important stories are. Mm-hmm. And I guess you had to make sure your griot didn't get eaten by a lion.
Yeah, trampled by an elephant.
Lion. There goes 400 years of stories. But, this is how important this process is. And I think one of the most important things I realized, it took me till I was 50, that all these movies, all these TV shows, all these, books and things that we talk about, they're all owner's manuals, part of the owner's manual to life. Because they don't give you an owner's manual.
No, don't.
I keep checking the mailbox every day just to make sure.
They have your address wrong.
They do that. I moved too many times. That's what it is. I should probably update that. But can you share me with your book? Did they mail you yours?
No, don't have one. I'm trying to write it.
And that's why we tell stories. So final thoughts as we go out, pitch people on where they can pick up the book, where they can follow up with you to stay in touch for future book releases.
Yeah, absolutely. You can buy it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart. You can follow me on Instagram at author.Kelli Kassoff. And my website has all that, kellikassoff.com.
There you go. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show, Kelli. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate you.
Thank you. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the TikTok, and Chris Voss Facebook.com. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next time. And that should have us out, Kelli.